same round of applause when they introduced me as Jimmy Carter's son. I don't understand it. You know, I love being Ronald Reagan's son. You walk around, people come up to you all the time and say, we love your father. And that's really great. I'm so glad that the Reagans were pro-adoption and adopted me into the Reagan family. They did not know then what I know now, that had they not adopted me into the Reagan family, they would not have a conservative child in the Reagan family. You know, you may hear my brother Ron say that our father would not be supportive of organizations like this, but it was organizations like this that helped elect Ronald Reagan to the presidency in 1980. Thank you very much. It is really an honor and a pleasure for me to be here. I have not been to Wisconsin since 1980 and the campaign of 1980, where I was out working for my father as I was in 1976 and during the gubernatorial years when he was governor of the state of California. And I thought, what should I say to such a great group? I could tell you stories. For instance, I could tell you the story of being an 8-year-old child and riding with my father out to the ranch in Malibu, where he had his second ranch called Yearling Row. And as an 8-year-old child, I thought my father was pretty cheap, only paying me $1 a week allowance, and I was trying to keep up with the Crosby kids and the Crawford kids and the Hope kids, who were getting a lot more than that every single week from their parents. And so I thought I would ask my dad for a larger allowance. Then I remember, of course, my father was from the Midwest, and he believed in something called a work ethic. Not something that a Beverly Hills brat really believed in. But the reality of it is, when I asked my father for a larger allowance, my father, instead of saying, well, Mike, no, or well, Mike, yes, decided to tell me about the tax system in America. Now, I had two options, listen or jump out of the car. So I sat there and listened, wanting to know what the punchline was going to be, and he told me how the government was taking 90 cents out of every dollar. With the 10 cents that was left, he had to take care of his first wife, my mother, Jane Wyman, my sister Maureen, myself, his new wife Nancy, his new daughter Patty, the cows, the horses, the ranch, and of course the foreman of the ranch. And I found myself driving into the ranch with my father that day, actually offering him back half of my allowance. And my father looked at me and says, no, Michael, you don't have to give me back half your allowance, but I'll tell you, I'll make you a deal. I said, what's that? He says, when a president is elected, he gives me a tax break. I will, in fact, give you a larger allowance. So about 9 years old, I found myself being more political. Not knowing Democrat from Republican, just knowing I'm going to get more money. And when John Kennedy was elected in 1960, he gave everybody a tax break from 90% down to 70%. My father moved me from $1 to $5. He stayed true to his word. And that's one of the great things about Ronald Reagan. There's stories like that all through his life. He remembered what he would tell you, and he would stay true to his word all the way through. And because of that, he was able to win the Cold War without firing a shot. They were at the Reagan Ranch Center in Santa Barbara. There was about 73 of them, and some presidents of some of the high schools across this country. And I talked to them about my father in this way. I said, let's take you back to 1976. What was 1976? It was the time my father lost the nomination to the Republican Party there in Kansas City. And what happened at that time? Well, my father lost. Where do we go from here? And my father gave a speech. He was brought down to the lectern, to the podium, by the sitting president, Gerald Ford, who had just got done speaking. And he was asked to say a few words, much, of course, to the absolute surprise of the Reagan family and everybody else, that a sitting president would invite the great communicator down to have the last few words to say to a convention that stayed to hear him and a television audience that was glued to the set. And what did my father talk about? He talked about the fact that he was asked to write a letter. To write a letter to a people that would live 100 years in the future. A letter that we put into a time capsule to be opened up in 2076. And he said it was a daunting task to do that. to write to these people he would not know, but they would know everything about us. And he said, what do I write about? He's driving up the coast of California, the Pacific on his left, San Ynez Mountains on the right. And he said, do I write about freedom and the freedoms that we enjoy in America today? And he thought to himself, if we do not make the right decisions today, they may not even have the right to open up the time capsule in 2076 to read what he had written. It all depends on what we do today, the decisions we make today. He thought, do I write about nuclear proliferation and the fact that there's so many countries out there with nuclear missiles aimed at each other? I could write about that, he thought, but they'll know if we use them or not, depending on if we make the right decisions today. And I was thinking about that yesterday and this morning, getting ready for this, that we're in that same position now as we were back in 1976. Decisions that we have to make and where we're going to go. Because if we don't make the right decisions today, they may not have the freedoms to open up the letter my father wrote to be read in 2076. If we don't make the right decisions today, no telling what's going to happen with Iran and the rest of the world. It really comes down to decisions and what we're going to do. My father said something else that day, that night. He talked about a call to arms, that there's been a call to arms. He was talking about Gerald Ford and the call to arms of bold colors, not pastels. And he talked about these bold colors of who we are and what we are and the determination of who we need to be. But I don't think my father chose those words lightly. I don't think he just said call to arms kind of off the cuff like it really didn't mean anything. I think my father was thinking back to an earlier time when there was a call to arms, thinking of the Minutemen and the militias back in the founding of this great country of ours, and thinking, what would they do when they were called to arms? Because they were called to arms on a moment's notice. And they would go out and hear, to arms, the British are coming. To arms, the British are coming. You could say today, to arms, the American government is coming and coming and coming. And what are we going to do?